Hello and welcome to a Project Cars 2 video where today we have round 3 of the Apex Online Racing Clio Cup League. This is going to be the final round that I'm showing of this championship here on the channel because unfortunately I wasn't present for round 4. I was actually on holiday in Austria skiing, so I ended up missing that one, but we have both races here, race 1 and 2 from round 3 with the cockpit cam as well, so driving from my perspective, unlike last week in round 2 where unfortunately my recording buggered up. Now before we get fully into the video, I just quickly wanted to let you guys know down in the description below is links to my social media channels. It'd be very much appreciated if you go take a look at those, follow me there. There's also a link to my Discord, so if you have any questions about this video, about setups or any other various technical stuff, or you just want to talk about racing sims, come join me and plenty of others in the Discord and join in the conversation. It'd be very cool to have you there. Now, coming back to the content of the video itself, we're currently in the qualifying session. We are on a flying lap, but this is not my fastest flying lap. We're going to be showing you the quickest one that gets me the best starting position for the 20-minute sprint race. But we are just coming across the start-finish line now to begin our lap. And almost immediately we're presented with turn 1 completely flat out. Just keep the pedal completely flat planted to the floor and just gently guide the car in. Coming into turn 2, very short braking zone, just flip the car in, holding 6th gear. We've got to watch out for the curbs though, because touching those will pretty much instantly result in a spin. Completely flat out through turn 3. So we're on the approach down to the very tricky turn 4 down at the hairpin here. So braking just as we're coming into the left-hander, try and keep the car balanced, using the throttle as well just to keep the rear end planted a little bit more and then guide the car through the hairpin itself. Turn 5 here, nice and easy, completely flat out, doesn't trouble the car whatsoever. Now we're coming up to turn 6, a pretty quick left-hander. So we're just approaching that. We're going to flip the car in, keeping the car completely flat out once again on the throttle, just guiding the car between the curbs there. And now we come into the hairpin of turn 7, flicking it down into 2nd gear, chucking the car in, using a bit of the curb and the grass on the outside there. 3rd gear for turn 8 here, again completely flat out, so will be turn 9. We just flip the car in and try and keep it away from the hay bales on the outside there, keeping a nice smooth line. We've got a fairly short run down towards turn 10. This is the short version of Rouen. We're flicking it down 1 gear and chucking the car in, just about keeping hold of it as we come into turn 11 now. Down 1 more gear into 4th, then we try and fling over to the right hand side of the track to open up the following left-hander, which is very quick, and use all the available room to you on the outside there before the right-hander kink, which is completely flat out. Now we come into this little left-hander, which is also completely flat before we approach the final turn. Braking pretty hard, shifting it down into 2nd gear, chucking the car in, planting the throttle on the exit to try and keep that rear end nicely planted, and then getting a good drive coming off for the run to the start-finish line. At the moment we're currently in a provisional P6. This is going to be an improvement on our lap time when we go up to a provisional P3, but by the end of the session we actually end up down in P4 as Yogurt goes and places himself up into P3 just ahead of us there. So let's now actually advance onto the race session, going straight to the grid. I've got the loose default setup applied to the car for the race. So here are the 3 lights just coming on now. There's the green light, so launching straight off from a standing start, trying to get a decent launch. It looked relatively good, and we're starting to close up a little bit on the 2 cars in front and make a little bit of room to the guys behind. Very difficult this first sector here, so we need to be very careful and cautious, almost going single file, although Yogurt's having a look down the inside of As Turbo coming into turn 2. As Turbo decides to play the long game and lets him go through, so now we're very much single file as we come through turn 3, trying to stay away from the curbs. This is very much a race of survival here, as touching those curbs in the first sector can be deadly. Coming pretty cautious, coming down the bottom into the hairpin here. A few of us getting on the brakes nice and early just to make sure that we don't end up spinning with the entire field behind us. And the front 4 of us get through that corner quite nicely. Seems like Tiago Pereira behind us in P5 got through it quite nicely as well, although he's 8-9 tenths of a second off the rear of my car. Just coming through turn 6 there. Now we're on the approach to turn 7, the next hairpin. A few people locking up slightly in front of us, but not going to trouble them. Managed to make the apex. And now it's just kind of a bit of a drafting train at the moment. The four of us fairly close together. It's not really any straights on this short version of Rouen Les Arts, where you can kind of pick up a real good slipstream and make a pass, apart from the start finish straight and down into turn 1, but turn 1 is very, very hairy to go side by side with. This back section is quite nice. There's a couple of places where the curbs are pretty much non-existent and you can basically just run the grass a little bit. Like we got a slightly better run than As Turbo there. This is actually another one of those potential passing opportunities. It's coming into the final hairpin here, so we're just looking to pick up the slipstream on As Turbo. He's going slightly defensive as we come into the braking zone, so I'm just going to try and line myself up for a better exit, knowing that he's going to be tighter. A little bit of contact there between the two of us, as he was a little bit slower at the apex than I was expecting. I was expecting to be able to actually switch back underneath him on the exit, but that didn't quite work. So we're right there underneath the rear wing and rear bumper of his car as we come into turn 1. Not going to go side by side though, because that would just be too dangerous this early on in the race. And then coming down towards turn 2, just going to settle in behind, just take it nice and smoothly, just give myself a little bit of breathing room. That's about as much as you can get away with on the curbing there. Just catching it quite nicely. The car was pretty planted as we both rode up onto the curb, but it is so easy to just clip that curb and then end up shooting yourself round and off to the left or right hand side of the circuit. As Turbo a little bit slow on the apex there, ran a little bit deep off the hairpin, which allowed me to close up in. And as you saw, got very, very close to touching his rear bumper again, but managed to keep off it this time. Mr. Van Orman, my teammate, is out there in the lead at the moment, starting to pull away. We're about 1.8 seconds off the back of him. Yorguk is following him, but there is a few car lengths between, and then obviously myself and As Turbo kind of holding back a little bit. Thiago Pereira is still lurking in and around a second behind us as well, and he's managed to drop Smolder and Gerard Gaval. So a few of us starting to string out a little bit from one another, and you can see in a few places the three drivers up in front slightly stronger than myself, although through that right-hander there of turn 11 we were a bit neater and tidier than As Turbo was. Likewise through turn 12, to help us coming through turn 13 a little bit more, but still there's a good few car lengths between us, just over half a second. So now coming into the final turn once again. Quite a big lock up there from As Turbo, also myself going very, very deep as well. Just out braking myself a little bit there, and that's going to cost me even more time. As you can see, lost about a second to Mr. Van Orman there on that lap, and the gap is now a second between myself and As Turbo, but that's going to give me plenty of room for coming into turn 1 and this first sector here. We just had DH Gamer coming out of the pit lane, a back marker. He did kind of come out right into my line of fire coming in towards turn 1. Unfortunately, that's where the pit exit actually is. It feeds you right in onto the racing line for the first corner, which is in majority of cars completely flat out. So the speed difference between someone who's been actually lapping and someone who's coming out of the pit lane is quite substantial, and it's pretty dangerous. As Turbo going very deep there, going into the hairpin. That's allowed us to gain a whole bunch of ground back up onto the rear of his cars. We've got 15 minutes remaining here in this 20-minute race, and the finishing positions for this one will determine the grid order for race 2, where the top 16 finishers here in race 1 will get put in reverse grid order. So P1 will start P16, P2 will start P15, P3 will start P14, so on and so forth, down through to P15 starting in second place, and P16 starting in first. And then those outside the top 16 will be starting in the order that they actually finish. So 17th will start in 17th, 18th, 18th, so on and so forth. Now, skipping forward 10 minutes or so in the race, because the middle section of the race was pretty uneventful. Nothing really happened other than the gaps kind of staying the same. The two leaders had a little bit of a battle, but the positions didn't change We kind of lost a little bit of ground to As Turbo, but we gained that back up, and we've obviously dropped the guys behind. So we've got 3 minutes and 40 odd seconds in the race remaining, just coming into turn 10 here, catching the curb quite awkwardly on the inside with both wheels, going up onto 2 wheels there, and we've now got a slowdown warning coming into this twistier section, which isn't going to be good. It's going to be very difficult to give back the time to clear that one, so I'm just going to continue and press on through with that and just kind of take it on the chin. We've got the gap to Thiago Pereira behind, so that's not too much of an issue. Coming into the final hairpin, we finally get the time penalty, which is 2 seconds overall from that, which is quite frustrating, but never mind. We've got the gap. We just need to hold on to the back of As Turbo, who's fairly close. He's around about a second off the back of Yogurt now. At the moment, he's slowly been closing that gap down to him. So here we are coming into the first sector of lap 9. Now coming into turn 2, braking just a little bit. As Turbo a little bit wide there, way out on the grass. Manages to gather that one back up and hold on to that. So that's quite fortunate for him. Brushing the curbs there going through turn 3. That was a little bit risky, but the car remained fairly planted and settled. Can't want it to break away. Coming into the hairpin, various puffs of smoke from all 3 drivers in front, and probably myself as well, as we're all locking up the brakes and sliding the car around a little bit there, going into that tight hairpin at the bottom of the hill. So yeah, in pretty good stead for 4th position at the moment. As mentioned, got that gap to Thiago Pereira behind, even with the 2 seconds, so that's not a worry there. Just need to basically hold the ground, hold the station, and we'll be picking up a decent haul of points for P4 here. And then obviously the reverse grid order will be starting in front of the 3 drivers that are there in front of me, so it should be starting in P13. Which be a pretty good spot for the second race. Obviously, trying to work our way through the field will be a little bit risky in some of the places at the early part of the race. Obviously, you've got 40 minutes to try and work our way through the grid, so we've got plenty of time in order to get to the front, but even still, it's going to be pretty gnarly and pretty intense racing, as I think As Turbo is having a look down the inside of Yogurt coming into the final turn. So those 2 positions have closed up, and As Turbo's also got himself a 2-second penalty as well. So he's managed to get the position and pop himself back up into P2 ahead of Yogurt. Obviously As Turbo started in 2nd place at the beginning of the race, but Yogurt took that 2nd position away into turn 2 on the first lap. But he's now got to try and build that 2-second gap, or 1-second gap in fact, in order to hold on to that position. A little bit wide here coming through turn 2, catching the grass and the curb. That's going to spun me round, and into the wall we go, hitting the Armco barrier quite heavily. That's going to give us damage at the front of the car. Rejoining back onto the circuit, we are just ahead of Thiago Pereira when we do so, but we've gone and lost that position, so that's now down into P5. I've got damage on both the front and rear of the car. 7 aero damage at both ends, and then also 4 suspension damage on the right rear. And as you can see, that's proving to be fairly difficult to handle coming into the braking zone of the hairpin there. But we've got a bit of a gap to Jack Game 88 behind. We just need to hold on to that in order to try and keep and salvage this 5th position. That's basically the last lap of the race as well that happened on, which is mighty frustrating. I mean, it's only 1 position that we've lost, and thankfully it's only this lap that we need to finish with a damaged car and not any more. But still, would have been nice to have kept that 4th position. Would have given us more points. Although, obviously, the flip and counter side to this is that I'm going to be starting 1 position further up, so I'll be starting in P12 rather than in P13. That's obviously providing that I managed to bring the car back home in the current 5th position. But we're into the last sector. We just need to be nice and smooth and try and keep the car under control coming through here, which we managed to do so. It really seemed like it was the braking zone of turn 4 the hairpin at the bottom of the hill. That was really tricky with the damage. So hopefully it's not going to be too difficult here with this final hairpin. Obviously it's a lot flatter, but still it's quite a heavy braking zone. So coming into that, just trying to be a bit smoother, and fortunately the car is nice and compliant, and we get through that one. So we'll be coming across the start-finish line as Thiago Pereira is flashing his lights. Fairly happy with that 4th position. We come across the line in P5, so we'll be starting in P12 for the next race. There is a confirmation of the results then. So As Turbo does manage to hold on to that 2nd place with Mr. Van Orman in 1st, Jorgo going in 3rd position, and obviously 4th Thiago Pereira, myself in 5th place. So moving on to race 2 then. As you can see, this race is going to be at night, and we're just on the formation lap at the moment, and we are now forming up into the 2x2 formation. Just doing a little bit of tyre weaving here, just to try and get a little bit more heat into the tyres and brakes. We're going to be starting in P12, providing that Thiago Pereira forms up into his proper position alongside and just in front of me. So coming into the final corner now, it's going to be obviously a manual rolling start. We've got about 36 odd minutes of racing to go, and this is going to be a very interesting first few laps with everyone kind of trying to filter through the first sector. So we're just waiting for the guys in front to put their foot down so we can go racing, which I believe they have now done. So immediately getting a fairly good launch off the start there, and it looks like we're trying to jump Jack Game, who started just in front of me. There he is up alongside. A little bit of door panel rubbing between the two of us as we come out the exit of turn 1, coming on the run down towards turn 2. The car trying to break away from us a little bit there as we're going side by side through the turn, but we managed to survive. We're up into P11, nipping P10 as we come into turn 3. A few people just kind of backing out and trying to take it relatively easy and survive a little bit. Now going to have to filter into a single file formation here, coming down into the hairpin. Could have possibly maybe have gone for the lunge down the inside there, but that would have been a bit risky and a little bit difficult. So instead we'll try it on the exit to see if we can slip on through. Coming through turn 6, Marauder squeezing me up onto the curb there on the inside. We're going to be on the outside here for the very fast turn 7. We're going to have to slot in behind because it's going to be very difficult to go side by side through there. And I've now got my teammate looking down the inside here coming into the turn 7 hairpin, so I'm going to let him go and slot in behind him and see if I can follow him on through the field as we try and make up the positions to try and get to the front. So he's had a good start already. Jorguk and As Turbo are right hot on my heels as well, having gained some positions in the opening half of the first racing lap. Coming into turn 10, taking it fairly easy. Marauder kind of setting the pace for this train at the moment as he's dropped off the back of the guys in front of him. And teammate Mr. Van Orman looking very racy, wanting to try and find a way past as quickly as possible. Coming through this twisty section, it looks like he's going to be trying to go for the move, possibly on the outside coming into the hairpin. He's on the inside here coming through the left-handed kink, and he may actually get the move done before he gets to the braking zone. Two drivers braking at the same point, and yes, he does indeed. Marauder slotting in behind, so now we've got to try and find our way through as quickly as we possibly can. The light glaring off the back of the boot there of the Clio Cup. But coming into the first turn of lap 2, Mr. Van Orman's managed to slip past WMDR Martin. We've got cars flipping up the road in front of us. It's going to be a big accident as we've gone and joined straight into that massive pile up as well. An absolute catastrophe here in race 2 on the second lap. We've got cars flying down the circuit into the wreckage as well. Just trying to wait and find a decent spot to rejoin and reform up on the track. And we've still got cars trying to recover as well. There the space opens up for me to slip on through and try and get underway again, but we've got severe damage to the front of the car. As you can see, 56 aero damage at the front on the bodywork, and we've got 22 suspension damage at the front of the car as well. That was really unfortunate as that unfolded on the straight between turns 1 and 2. It is such a high-speed section going into there, and unfortunately I got caught up behind the car immediately in front of me, so my vision was a little bit impaired, and then when I did try and take avoiding action, I caught the curb as well, which kind of dipped two wheels onto the grass, which contributed in sending me round and spinning into that crash. I think a few other drivers, I know my teammate Mr. Van Orman got caught up in that carnage as well, but I know some actually managed to slip on through completely unscathed. Not entirely sure how, but that was absolutely catastrophic for us there. We're now down in P19 with quite a lot of damage that we need to repair. Just taking a look down below at the temperatures of the engine, as one of the cars there, King Kodiak, having some troubles trying to recover back to the pit lane. So quite a few of us carrying very heavy damage at the moment. And yeah, just trying to get back to the pit lane so I can get the car repaired, but catching that curb on the inside, that's going to be sending us spinning round once again and into the wall once more. There goes As Turbo. He was just behind me going into the incident there earlier on in the lap, but we've now got even more damage to the front of the car. It's now up to 66 rather than the 50 odd that we had previously. So now I'm just basically just trying to sort out my pit strategy so I can go in and get the car repaired. Looks like I also been needing to take on some fuel here in this race in order to actually make it to the end, but I imagine there's going to be quite a few of us in the pit lane trying to get the car sorted. Here is the pit entry, really short. As you can see, managed to make it onto the pit speed limiter, and this time we've got the indicator for our pit crew, so I know which one it is. So the fuel's going in. There's a car. That's Yogurt, that in fact, who was also just behind me going into the car, into the carnage. He's missing a rear boot, but he's now got that fixed as we're repairing our car before we venture back out onto the track and seeing what we can do in terms of salvaging and recovering the race here. So there we go, getting launched out onto the circuit. I need to be careful here that I'm not merging back out into the race leaders, but that was perfectly fine. They seem to be quite a way off coming round and actually putting a lap on us. So we've got the front lights fixed, as I think one of them was smashed out from the accident as well, but we've now got both of those back. So now it's a case of trying to close that 30-35 odd second gap to Tony Takos up in front. We've got 29 minutes and 50 odd seconds before the checkered flag as well, but skipping ahead a little bit, we're closing up onto the back of Tony, still in 18th position. We've got best part of 24 minutes there or thereabouts remaining. There is Tony just up in front, about 4 seconds up the road, and just beyond him is also Royalty, but Tony's having some real troubles coming through turn 2. That's going to be us up into P17 as we pick up that position. I'm not entirely sure if Tony is nursing some damage or if he's just really struggling at the circuit here, but coming down into the hairpin, obviously trying to close the gap to the guys up in front. We've got DH Gamer and also Royalty not too far up the road, about 6 to 7 seconds there or thereabouts. Just saw him briefly up ahead, and Yorgok's back out onto the circuit as well, as we knew. He's 30 odd seconds behind me. I believe my teammate Mr. Van Orman is also behind as well, but we'll stick with it for the moment as we're fairly rapidly closing up onto DH Gamer and Royalty in front, who are battling away. Coming into turn 9, completely flat, nice and smooth. Not had any trouble since the pit stop so far, which has been good. Turn 10, nice and smooth there. Though we did drop and use 4th gear in that one. You can see my confidence has been hit a little bit. The fastest lap is down from where it usually be, but I think we gave up a load of time trying to pass Tony in a fairly safe manner as he was rejoining back onto the circuit in turn 3. It wasn't completely flat out, as we did lift off the gas there. But yeah, the two guys up in front battling away hard, which is allowing me to close up pretty rapidly on their battle. King Kodiak is retired to the pit lane after severe damage at the beginning of his race. I believe he was caught up in the carnage on the exit of turn 1, and also had some more troubles as well in trying to return back to the pit lane. So he gave up on this race and turned to the commentary box instead. But you can see much quicker than the two guys in front. One of them has got quite severe damage. He keeps left on the exit of turn 2. That allows us to slip through without losing too much time. We've lost about a second in terms of lap time, but we're still pretty much there with Royalty up in front. You can see a fair bit more confident coming down into the hairpin there. It's very much a case of trying to brake hard, trying to keep the steering angle as shallow as possible going in through that braking zone, but also keeping your foot somewhat on the accelerator slightly, just to try and keep the weight a little bit more rearwards over the rear tyres to stop them from losing traction and the car over rotating you going on into the heavy braking zone. So coming through the left-hander, half a second off the back of Royalty, closing up on him quite nicely, and we've got a few cars beyond him that are a lap down. They're 25 odd seconds up the road, so P14 is beyond that somewhere. I'm sure once we pass Royalty here, we'll find out as to how far away they actually are, lining ourselves up for a fairly good run coming on towards the final hairpin. Gained a little bit of ground there going through the little left-hander, but we're going to be on the outside here in the braking zone, very much side by side, giving him the room on the apex there, just in case he was taking it, but he did actually back out of the defending the move in the end. So that's allowed me to slip on through up into P15. And there we can see 35 seconds up the road is Tiago Pereira. So he is the next position that we need to gain, but we are rapidly gaining time on him, so he must have had a spin somewhere along the line on this lap, just costing him an awful lot of time. But skipping ahead now, still eating away at that gap to Tiago a little bit. It's now down to 28 seconds. We gained a position through somebody pitting, so we're now up into P14 as we're coming into turn 10 here, nice and smoothly through there. 16 minutes remaining, so we're now into turn 12, although we've gone a little bit deep, caught the curb on the exit, which has gone and unsettled the car. It's spinning round on us. We've gone and made contact with the wall. That's a little bit of damage at the front of the car there. There goes Royalty, he slips on through. So we're now back down into P15 again with 5 aero damage at the front of the car. No suspension damage, fortunately, but still we could have done without that little mistake there. Just catching the curb on the exit of turn 11, spinning us round. It's pretty frustrating, adding to the frustrations from this race and the incident that we got caught up in earlier on. Now we've got to try and manage the remaining 15 minutes with that damage. It's not really worth pitting in to try and fix that, as we'll probably end up losing a whole bunch more time. Royalty's now 5 seconds up the road. There we can see him in the distance, just braking going into turn 2. So we go on through. Still seems like there's plenty of grip. There's no real noticeable change in the car in terms of top speed or anything like that at the moment, but you can never really be too sure unless you have fully taken note of what the top speeds were at the fastest point on the circuit, which is something that I hadn't actually done. As you can see, we're only 2.5 tenths off our previous fastest, so it's not really worth going in and trying to repair the damage. Instead, we're just going to try and soldier on, push through it. But pushing forward another minute and a half or so, we've closed up more onto the back of Royalty. Also, we're gaining an awful lot of time on Crab and P13. As Royalty has a big slide there under braking coming into the hairpin. So do we. We just about managed to gather that one back up. There's now a hay bale on the inside of the exit there, which Royalty just kind of collected and caught. That's going to give an awful lot of damage to the front of his car, and he's now slowing down, moving over to the side of the track to allow us through up into P14. But yeah, that slide was pretty dramatic. Managed to gather it back up though for the corner. And again, just catching the curb on the entrance to turn 7 there. Really having to fight and wrestle the car to get it through the turn. Managed to gather it back up under control. But yeah, this has certainly been far from the tidiest of races. Crab's now 12-13 seconds up the road. So we need to try and close that gap down if we want to try and nip P13 away. We're now under a minute behind the race leader, which is currently held by Smolder. Turbo's managed to get himself up into second place. So a lot of drivers have been pitting here in this one, as Turbo was kind of in and around us earlier on in the race, and I think, if my memory serves me right, pitted at the same time as we did at the end of lap 2. But we're now beginning our 13th lap as we are coming into the last 10 minutes and 45 odd seconds or so. There we can see our nearest competitor, WMDR Martin, just up the road. So him and Crab have swapped positions, but I think that's due to Martin having made a pit stop. Although, having said that, the two of them have gone and collected each other coming through turn 3. No, that's Royalty and Crab. Sorry, WMDR Martin's gone on through completely unscathed, but that was Royalty and Crab collecting each other through turn 3. So we're now down into 13th position, 2 places gained with that one, and we're now right up onto 1.5 seconds off the back of WMDR Martin here. So this could potentially us being able to grab 12th position in the final 10 minutes now, which would be ideal. Some more points that we can score here in this second race. And Martin getting really sideways there going into the turn 7 hairpin. I think he just caught the curb, which flung the car round into a 45-degree slide. That's allowed us to gain a whole bunch of car lengths on Martin, having been a lot smoother. Getting a pretty good run here coming up towards turn 10, looking down the inside of him. That's going to be fairly tight as we come into this corner, catching the inside curb. We've actually gone and flung the car around and spinning. Martin manages to avoid making contact with us. We just slightly grazed the fence there, but nothing too major, trying to get the car turned around in front of Royalty there to recover back onto the circuit as soon as we possibly can. That's us now back down into 14th position. That's really quite frustrating, considering we were momentarily up into P12. Probably could have taken it a little bit more cautiously going into that corner, or possibly pit my moment a little bit better. Just too tight on the line going in, and yeah, that bounced us up onto 2 wheels and destabilised the car, but luckily managed to keep it out of the wall there. Sorry. Now actually coming up towards the back marker, Tony Takos coming right across the circuit there on the final corner. That was pretty dangerous, but just about managed to read that situation unfolding and slip on through unscathed. So we're still in 14th position as the clock continues to wind on down. Just over 8 minutes remaining. Quite a big gap to Martin and Royalty up in front. 13 odd seconds for the pair of them. Nice smooth run there through turn 2 and 3. We're kind of up on the curb a little bit. going through 2 on the exit, but we managed to gather that one back up. Coming into the hairpin now, just being nice and tidy. And it looks like we've gained a whole bunch of time on Royalty and Martin going through the hairpin there. Gap's now 10 seconds, so 3 seconds gained on the pair of them. And they've actually, well, they're chopping and changing and swapping positions. Royalty's actually dropped off the back of Martin now. There we can see him, just in front, going fairly slow. So we're closing up onto him, coming up towards turn 7. Now into turn 8 and 9. Nice and smooth through that. 7 minutes remaining, so it's just a case of just surviving till the end. So we fling it into turn 10. And then we get a massive, great big screen freeze just as we're coming into turn 11. This happened in the first race of round 1. We've gone and collected the wall with that and picked up a whole load of damage. And in fact, Tony Takos has just gone and made pretty hefty contact with the side of our car there as he was coming through the corner. I think he panicked, having seen that I crashed, and then lost control of the car and went straight into the side of me. So we've picked up a whole load of damage for the final 6 minutes. We've gone and lost the position to Yorgurk as well. So we're now down to P15. 28 damage on the front, 4 damage on the rear, and then 12 damage on the front right suspension. Got 6 minutes remaining. It's not really worth pitting at this stage. Mr. Van Orman, a teammate, 13 odd seconds down the road behind. Might as well just nurse the car home, see if we can pick up any other stragglers or people who end up crashing. Car still feels reasonably stable at this point. Obviously these corners here are a real test to see. Flinging it in through turn 2 was kind of a all or nothing. There wasn't really too much to lose by pushing the car through 2 and 3 just to test the stability of the car, and it's pretty much there. It's quite easily manageable. It's alright, so we might as well keep on pushing. So Yorgurk's got a 1 second penalty to his name. Is 4 seconds up the road though. And I think with the damage that I've got, it's going to be pretty difficult to close that gap down onto the back of him to try and retake 14th position. And skipping ahead to the final minute of the race, Yorgurk did continue to pull the gap away from myself, and my teammate behind has been closing up on me as well. At this point, I'm kind of very much thinking of the championship for him, as he's battling with As Turbo for the Drivers' Championship. Obviously, this is not a good round for him, and at the moment, As Turbo is up there battling for first position, as you can see up in the top left. As the countdown clock is basically counting down to completely finish with 0, so whatever lap the race leader is on at the moment is going to be the final lap of the race. But yeah, I'm thinking of the Drivers' Championship for him. I'm obviously not going to be present for the final round of the season, and I'm not in with the fight, so I'm thinking of basically letting Mr. Van Orman go through to take this 15th position, which will just be a couple more points for him, which might help him in his Drivers' Championship. So just slowing to allow Mr. Van Orman to get a little bit closer. So coming through the final turn here. Here he is, just up behind. I'm going to allow him to slip on through here on this start-finish straight and just sit behind him, because the leaders are just behind us now. And as you can see, Mr. Van Orman's car is very heavily damaged, but I think that was all pretty much from the incident at the start of the race. And now the leaders have just crossed the start-finish line, so we got 150 odd seconds to make it to the checkered flag. And now I just need a basically keep the car on the track. It's going to be 16th position that I'm going to finish in. No one else can overtake me here at this point. I just need to make sure that I give Mr. Van Orman more than 2 seconds, so he doesn't lose the position to me with the time penalty that he's got. But he's quite comfortably starting to pull that gap out. So now on the run up towards turn 6 here, flinging the car in. Nice and smooth. Into turn 7 for the final time. Car doesn't feel too bad to drive at this point. It's just, yeah, fairly slow with all the damage. And now Mr. Van Orman's got a fairly healthy gap to me, 4 seconds. Not through me just lifting, but more just him pushing on through. But unfortunately, as I mentioned at the start of the video, this is going to be the final race of the Clio Cup League. There would have been another race after this one at the Monza short circuit, but I wasn't present for that, so I don't have the recording obviously to put up here on the channel. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this Clio Cup League, and hopefully this has been an entertaining race for you guys. The fuel warning light is also flashing at me down in the bottom right to say that I've got only a couple of litres remaining. But here is the checkered flag. Going to be coming across the start-finish line for P16 in the end. Across the line there you can see the heavily battered and damaged car after everything that is endured in this race, and Smolder does just about manage to hold off As Turbo for the race win. But that's going to be the conclusion for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to either leave them down in the comment section below or come and join my Discord, and you can kind of talk to me a little bit more personally and the rest of the community there. Otherwise, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would be very much appreciated. Got more educational and entertaining content on the way in the future. But otherwise, until the next one, thanks for watching. Have fun, stay safe, and take care.